Horror animes are not uncommon, however, there's very few series that deal with the supernatural. Well, quite recently an anime has finished airing, and despite this series having two cores, not a lot of people talked about it, which as a result made this series not have as much attention as it should be, which is a shame because in terms of supernatural horror, this series is one of the best series to be able to mainly focus on that, and did a good job showcasing how dealing with the supernatural can be a very scary and chilling thing if it ever happens to you. Now, of course, the supernatural topic is a very divisive topic because there are some people that do believe that there's such things as ghosts and spirits in the real world. However, there are also people who don't believe this kind of thing. And whether you believe it or not, you have to admit this is a very interesting topic, and this is the reason why so many people give it attention. I mean, even on the internet, there's still a lot of people that talk about the supernatural stuff that can be possibly be happening around the world. Now, for those who are curious, this series is called The Dark Gathering, and it's a very interesting concept because it involves characters who have had their fair shares of dealing with the supernatural. And one of these characters is Keitaro, who is a character that knows exactly what it's like to experience being involved with supernatural things. As a result of him messing with the supernatural, he and one of his very closest friends, this being Eiko, were both cursed, which as a result now they both have to wear gloves because that's where the curse went. And for a while, Keitaro was very depressed and blames himself for what had happened to him and what happened to Eiko, but thankfully, due to Eiko's convincing, it seems that he managed to get back to his feet because now he is entering college and managed to get himself a job as a tutor. And one of the people that he has to tutor is a girl that goes by the name Yayoi, who we come to find out is a relative of Eiko, and it seems that she has a very unique ability as she's able to detect spirits and has a goal to capture as many powerful spirits as possible because, as it turns out, she actually has a revenge plan for a thing called Kubo, because when she and her parents had a tragic accident, not only did it result in her parents both passing away, but this thing called Kubo took her mother's spirit, and ever since that day, Yayoi is determined to get as many powerful spirits as possible in order to defeat this Kubo thing. And when she finds out that Keitaro is able to sense the supernatural, she wants him to join her team in order to find these powerful spirits and achieve her goal. But of course, this also includes Eiko as well, because it seems that she is a huge fan of horror stuff, so she tags along as well. And one thing that makes this series all the more interesting is how one minute everything can be completely fine and it seems that it's just another slice of life series, and the next thing you know, they are facing evil spirits that are disturbing to see. And I wouldn't blame anybody that was creeped out because it clearly shows us from this series that they didn't hold back. There's a lot of things that happen with these spirits and the many terrifying things that they can do. There are many moments in this anime that just shows us just how chilling it can get and just how terrifying it must be dealing with the supernatural. These are things that no one can really explain, and these are things that are very difficult to deal with because, well, it's something that not a lot of people know how to deal with, and the solutions to defeating these spirits aren't all that simple. However, that is not to say that none of our characters know how to deal with these spirits, because it seems that Yayoi, despite her age, has a lot of knowledge about these spirit things, and it seems that she has done her research on what kind of spirit a spirit can be and how to be able to defeat a spirit, especially if it's an evil spirit. And something that you'll notice very quickly when you watch this anime is that Yayoi seems to have standards when dealing with these spirits. If it's a spirit that is evil and has done a lot of terrible things to very innocent people who have nothing to do with anything, were just trying to live their lives, then Yayoi will have no trouble punishing these spirits, and as a result, this will lead to these evil spirits experiencing a fate worse than death. As not only will Yayoi make sure they will not be able to rest in peace, but she hopes that her punishing these spirits can result in the people who were victims of this spirit be able to not only rest in peace, but feel like justice has been served. But on the other hand, there are moments in which Yayoi is able to show compassion to the spirits as she comes to realize that not every spirit is evil, and there's a reason why they became such these very cursed spirits who simply want to rest in peace. And this anime does a good job showcasing that not every spirit is evil for the sake of evil. Like I mentioned earlier, it's because of something that happened to them that made them become the spirits that they are. And one thing that I really enjoy about this is how they're able to showcase this but not drag it too much. There is a lot of examples that go into a lot of detail about these kinds of spirits and why they became the way they became, but I'm going to use two specific examples because these are the ones that I haven't forgotten and they just left a really big impact on me. One of these spirits used to be very beautiful, and it seemed that everything was going well in her life. Not only was everybody considering her to be very beautiful, but it seemed that she was almost about to be in some sort of relationship with a man who was very interested in her. However, that will all completely change once somebody who was filled with jealousy of her decided to try to ruin her life, and she managed to succeed, as this girl not only tried poisoning the man, but this resulted in the man believing that the woman who he was interested in was the one that tried poisoning him, when that was not the case. And this resulted in the man being filled with hate towards her, which resulted in this woman being physically attacked by him. And to make things worse, over time she slowly started to lose her beauty, and when she found out who was responsible for her life being in complete shambles, she was filled with rage to the point that one night the girl that was responsible for everything that happened to her, she would set on fire. And not only would this end her life, but this will also end her own life as well. And ever since then, she has become a very dangerous spirit, but it's a spirit that Yayoi wants to have because she has potential to be very good use of her. And for another example, we have a spirit that was actually haunting Yayoi's school, and the reason being was because this spirit actually used to be a teacher from this school. And not only was he being mistreated by the kids of this school, but some of these kids took it too far by starting to make false accusations towards him. And due to him not having a password for his phone, some of these kids actually took photos with his own phone that, let's just say, were not something that a person should have. But this wasn't his fault, as let me remind you once again that he was being falsely accused by these kids, who of course would then report to this school, and of course it managed to not only ruin his life, but the people who made these false accusations towards him managed to get away with it. And of course, after losing everything, his reputation and his family because of this whole incident, his life came crashing down. So he felt that the only way to be ending all of this is of course by taking his own life. And he did this in one of the classrooms of the school, and ever since then it seems that he's been haunting this school. And if you encounter this spirit, you actually end up having to play a very dangerous and disturbing game of hide and seek. These two spirits are great examples of that quote, evil is not born but made. It's very clear these two spirits became the way they became, not because of unknown reasons, but because they were pushed to that point. And believe me, these aren't the only spirits that have a very disturbing background. There are other spirits with disturbing backstories, but I don't want to touch those because of how messed up they are, and since we're on YouTube, I have to be very careful of what I say. But overall, I really did enjoy how these spirits played out throughout the entire story, and how fleshed out some of these spirits are, and we're not just one-dimensional characters. And speaking of characters, we have to talk about the main characters of this story because they also played a huge role. You have characters like Keitaro once again, who at first was very scared of having to deal with these supernatural things due to, of course, his traumatizing experience with the supernatural. But over the course of the series, we see that he slowly is starting to understand that this is something he has to deal with, because he comes to find out through Yayoi that he can actually lift his curse. Like, if he's able to somehow deal with these spirits, then hopefully he might be able to find an answer when dealing with these things on how to get rid of the curse that he's been having for a really long time. And he's very grateful for this because he wants not only his curse to be lifted, but Eiko's as well. And then of course we have Eiko, who seems to be very enthusiastic of this horror stuff, and despite everything that happened to her, she's still trying to be very positive, and it seems that she's still moving on with her life. But one thing that this series did that made a complete twist with this character is how she seems to have a different side of her when nobody's looking, and it was very quickly shown in the beginning of the series that Eiko has two personalities, and it makes us wonder if this is her natural self or if there's something that is making her be the way she is. That is something that's actually one of the mysteries of this anime, and it's something that was never really answered in the two cores that we had. But I wouldn't be surprised that if this series does continue and we do give more, then it's most likely that this question is going to be answered. And of course, Yayoi also had some character development as this series continued, where she once was just simply fixated on just getting her revenge. In order to get her mother's spirit back, she now starts to realize that she can't take the people that she has around her for granted, and actually starts to change her priorities. Like, one huge example is when another character that goes by the name of Ai is dealing with a very dangerous god, and this god has been messing with her for almost her entire life, and this will result in Yayoi declaring war on this god and trying to get as many powerful spirits as possible to defeat this god, which once again was something that was not on her plan. But just seeing what I had to go through because of this god, Yayoi feels like she has to do something in order to make sure that Ai is able to have a peaceful life. Of course, this isn't the only threat that the crew has to deal with, because as it turns out, there's also spirits that are able to take over human bodies that seem to have their own sinister plans as well. Which isn't going to be a surprise that in the near future, these things are going to be a threat to Yayoi, and it's something that she has to take care of when the time eventually comes. And very quickly, I just have to talk about the animation of this series, because I feel it's very good and is one of the highlights of this anime. Studio OLM is really good at making some scenes very beautiful, very colorful, but also at the same time showing us scenes that are very dark, filled with a lot of grim colors, and which makes the horror stuff really stand out. And when they really want to show us just how disturbing this anime can get, they don't hold back with the animation, which is not surprising because once again, this is Studio OLM, and for those who are curious as to what other projects they have been involved in animating, they've actually worked on other series like Komi Can Communicate and Summertime Rendering, and if you have watched any of those series, you will know that the animation and the styles of those series are just really amazing to see. So overall, I highly recommend you watch The Dark Gathering for those who are huge fans of not only the horror genre but also the supernatural genre as well. I never felt bored whenever watching an episode of this series, and there's a lot of twists and turns that happened in this anime that I never really got to mention. The reason being is because I want people to give this show a shot and see for themselves what makes this series scary but great at the same time. I'm really hoping that in the near future we get some sort of announcement that this story is going to continue, because the way the series ended, it implies that there's more to come and that this story isn't finished just yet. And if that doesn't happen, then I may potentially have to check the original source, this being the manga, but we'll just have to wait and see. And yeah, that's pretty much my entire video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.